Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We've been reading the Bikshu Gita, the song sung by the Avanti Brahmana, who many of you remember started as an extreme miser, driving his whole family over the edge. They couldn't tolerate him. And then he lost all his enormous wealth and was left with nothing. So then the family members had no use for him. There was no affection and there was no money. So that meant everything in ruins. He lost everything. But in that intense drama of devastating loss, he revived some bhakti credits that he had. They came to the fore amidst the disaster. And he made a remarkable reversal. He did a U-turn and decided he would dedicate the rest of his life to making up for lost time, and he had lost a lot of time. So remember his determination that if he had any time left, he would dedicate that fully to spiritual development. This is always a question that comes up by those sadhakas, those who are practicing bhakti, and those who are aspiring to practice bhakti. How much time is enough for Krishna? Could it be that there's such a thing as too much time for Krishna? I always point out, have you seen that verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna warns about too much Krishna? Has anyone seen that verse? Be careful, too much Krishna. But we're so attached to the illusory energy, our bodies, our minds, our possessions, our so-called achievements, that we're very guarded and we're worried. What will Krishna do to my stock of attachments? Now we have our ashrams, the Brahmacharya ashram, Grihastashram, a few vanaprasthas throughout the world, some sannyasis. All of those ashrams have to juggle the temporary and the eternal. It's just that some ashrams provide a more easy and cheaper way to do that. But still, all the four ashrams are meant for spiritual shelter. So in that sense, your ashram life is what you make of it. But there's no doubt there are circumstances surrounding you, no matter what ashram you're in. So the question is, how much do you identify with those circumstances? How much do you tie up your fate completely with the circumstances? So again, all the four ashrams are meant for spiritual shelter. And those four ashrams are executed within a material ocean that's swirling with changing circumstances, changing influences, changing events. So the ashrama, no matter which one of the four it is meant to steady you at Krishna's lotus feet amidst the whirl of circumstances. So whatever ashram you're in, you don't want to make it a whirlwind in of itself. It's supposed to be a shelter that protects you from the whirlwind, if you're living it correctly. So we all need to know how to find stability and steadiness in our particular ashram. You have to know how to deal with yourself. Whether you are single, married, you have to know how to deal with yourself. So I often point out that a necessary skill for bhakti yogis to develop is how to stand on your own 2 feet and not think that circumstances will protect you. Your family relationships will protect you. Especially at this phase of the world's history, everything is so tumultuous. You'll get some security from here, a little security from there, a little stability here, a little stability there, but everything can just reverse so quickly, whatever the circumstances are. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll be smooth sailing for decades and then kaboom. I spoke about how my mother, she lost her husband of 50 years. He departed his body in the early 90s and she's in the early 90s. So when she was telling me about her loneliness and that it's an empty house, I said, well, you had a good run, 50 years, But that just makes the blow even worse. When you have something for so long and then you lose it, you're just devastated. This is how cruel attachment to the material energy is. Even rarely when you get what you want, you lose it. You must lose it. And when you lose it, it's more crushing than if you had never had it before. So the intelligent person thinks about all this. How do I design my lifestyle so I cross this ocean of temporariness, of attachment? How do I increase my attachment for Krishna? And that art, science, and culture, every one of us has to learn. You can't just think, I can coast. Someone will live my life for me. Sooner or later, the reality manifests that you have to know how to stabilize yourself, protect yourself, and progress in bhakti. Just like you hear me often explain about the hopes for marriage. You may marry an Arjuna, you may marry a Draupadi, and you may not. Or it may be Arjuna or Draupadi for a while, and then. So sooner or later, you have to deal with that body that you see when you look in the mirror. No one can gloss over this reality. And this is what the Bikshu Gita is about. The Avanti Brahmana is facing the facts. It's my mind that's getting me into all this entanglement, attachment, aversion. The whole of material existence is an image reflected on the mirror of my mind. The mind teams up with the false ego and imagines material existence, in that it imagines our connection to material existence. So the Avanti Brahmana is very determined to point out the discrepancy here. You might think that he should go on a hunt, whom to blame. Remember what he went through? The harassment, the persecution, the abuse. Surely he should point out the culprits. Remember how badly he was treated? Or not everyone remembers? Instead of playing the blame game, he's going to isolate all the main targets, the usual main targets of blame. Remember? He explained that about 10 verses ago, in summary, concisely. Some say it's your own body. Some say it's other people. Some say it's the demigods. Some say it's the planets. Some say it's karma. Some say it's time. He's helping you analyze existence so you can become free of false blaming. Now, this doesn't mean that if someone abuses you, you refuse to blame that person. No, he's speaking in the sense of the entirety of the material universe. He said, when you look at the whole thing as a whole, you can't just point the finger at this or that or the other. This person, this body, this karma, this demigod. You have to see the whole scheme and realize that you as spirit soul have nothing to do with it. And you say, well, this is hard. Is he saying that if someone mistreats you and abuses you, doesn't give you what you want, that's abuse, right? If someone doesn't give you what you want, that is abusive behavior. So he's pointing out that you're neglecting, by doing that, you're neglecting the reality of the soul. It does seem that these other factors should be the most important. This one did that to me. That one did that to me. It's my karma. Or if you have some higher material knowledge, it's the devas, the demigods. So he's not denying their role, but he's saying it's not the main factor. Because you, as spirit soul, actually have nothing to do with material existence. So he's making this point again and again by going down the list of the 6. It's not this, it's not that, it's not that. People may say it is so, But I say false, 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 false. 6 times. He wants you to see how ferocious the mind is. So we'll chant text 50. We left off the other day about how, well, we'll just read it. Persons who identify with this body, which is simply the product of the material mind. Do you feel like that? Your body is a product of your material mind? No, you think, oh, it's just my body. I have it, and I should feel good with it, and I shouldn't feel sick with it, and I should feel comfortable, and we have all these dreams, but we don't see that the body actually is based on the template of the mind. So you start tracing the problem backwards to its source. You want to figure out the cause of the body and all its harassments and problems? Look at the mind. If you want to figure out the problem with the mind, you look at its combination with the false ego. And then you back up further to consciousness, which is the nature of the soul, the Atma. But you can't go further than that, because as the Avanti Brahmana is going to explain to you, the soul has no material influences, neither happiness or distress. So what happens then? There is a false identification. Just like when you sleep at night, you're dreaming, and it seems so real. You're here, you're there, you're traveling, you're with this person, that person. But it's all in your mind. And when you're dreaming, you falsely identify with that. The Avanti Brahmana is going to point out that our false identification is the source of the problem. You can't really blame the soul. And actually, the soul has no connection with all those external factors. So therefore, what are you going to do? You've got to wake up. That's your only option, to wake up. But we feel so busy with our externalities. And they create more and more complexity for us. As Prahlad Maharaj says, the solutions are more complicated than the problem the solutions are supposed to solve. Just like the world is being harassed by this pandemic, and everyone's waiting, not everyone, but most persons are waiting for the vaccine. But did you know that most of the vaccines being prepared have a distribution problem? The problem is not simply who gets it first. The wealthy nations, the poor nations, the elderly. Some say, give it to the elderly first. They're in the high-risk group. But the young people want to party without any worry. Give it to us first. We're the future. When you give it to the wealthy nations, to the poor nations, the fact is, wherever you are in the world, your COVID is my COVID. Everything is all linked together. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. So there's not simply a distribution problem in that sense, but scientifically, you have to keep the vaccine capsules at Arctic temperature. That means minus 88 Celsius. So you got to figure out how to do that. So everything in material existence is not just 1, 2, 3. We dream like that, don't we? I'll arrange this for myself. I'll arrange that for myself. I'll be with this one, and then we'll do this, and we'll get that. And it's like a song, huh? Sorry. The different genders have their customized dreams, right? All based on fantasy. But when you look at the reality, there's always intricacy, complexity, reversal. And when that happens, unless you can control your mind and senses, you don't know what to do with yourself. Just like during the lockdown period earlier this year, or whenever these phases come, our devotees know how to increase their hearing and chanting about Krishna. But do you think everyone can handle such restrictions? No. The mind is out of control. Just like I haven't been on an international flight for 6 months. It's taken me 6 months for the body to become normal. 6 months because of international traveling for more than 30 years straight. So you would think, oh, 1 month, 2 months, that would be sufficient. Now it's been 6 months. All of a sudden you start to realize, I'm not an airplane. But some people can't get over it. Just like in Australia now, Qantas is making money by offering flights within Australia for executives who are so habituated to getting on a plane every week. So now Qantas is offering scenic flights within Australia, mainly just so you can feel like you're flying again. So the flights go over the Great Barrier Reef or go over, some popular Australian sites, and just to relieve people's feelings of separation from airports and flying. It's true. They're recognizing here's a market niche. Flight junkies. It doesn't make sense to you because you have Krishna in the center of your life, I hope. But try to understand the mentality of others. They can't handle the withdrawal symptoms. Again, the culprit is the uncontrolled mind. So we were talking about wandering. Persons who identify with this body, which is simply the product of the material mind, are blinded in their intelligence, thinking in terms of I and mine, because of their illusion of this is I, but that is someone else. They wander in endless darkness. So we asked you the last time to feel like that. You're wandering in endless darkness. Remember, maybe there were some times in your life where you were groping through a dark room and you didn't know, maybe you were visiting someone and and you had to get up at night and you couldn't find the light switch. Yes, it happens. And so it's a very helpless feeling, isn't it? You can't find your phone, so you can turn on the flashlight on your phone. You're bumping into this and that. You feel so powerless. So this is material existence, wandering in endless darkness, birth after birth. And we imagine we see light. And we tell ourselves, just keep on going. Your eyes will become accustomed to the darkness. Keep on going in life. You'll become accustomed to the ignorance. You'll become habituated to the illusion, the suffering. And it's actually not so bad. So the Avanti Brahmana wants to give you the feeling of wandering in samsara, the cycle of repeated birth and death. This wandering is caused by our accepting the body, which is produced by the mind. So then we have to deal with the mind. But instead of doing that, we blame the 6 main categories. So we'll start with category number 1, the target of blame, number 1. Other people. That's a good one, isn't it? You all know what it's like to blame someone else for your lack of fulfillment, for blocking your happiness, for harassing you, for abusing you, for not giving you what you want, for not understanding what you want. That's a big crime, isn't it? The other person doesn't understand what you want. All right, we'll chant. Janastu hetu sukha dukkhayoschet. Kim atmanaschatra hi bhaumayastat. Jivam kuchit sandashati svatadbis. Tad vedanayam katamaya kupyet. Janastu hetu sukha dukkhayoschet. Kim atmanaschatra hi bhaumayastat. Jivam kuchit sandashati svatadbis. Tad vedanayam katamaya kupyet. Janastu hetu sukha dukkhayoschet. Kim atmanaschatra hi bhaumayastat. Jivam kvachit sandashati svatadbis. Tad vedanayam katamaya kupyet. Vaishnavis, Jana, these people. Two, but hey to, the cause, sukha dukkhayo, of my happiness and distress. Chet, if, kim, what, atmana, for the self, cha, and atra, in this conception, he, indeed, bhomaya, they pertain to the material bodies. Tat, that, status of being the performer and the sufferer. Jivam, the tongue. Kvatchit, sometimes. Sandashati, is bitten. Swa, by one's own. Jadbi, teeth. Tat, of that. Vedanayam, in the distress. Katamaya, with whom. Kupyet, can one get angry? Translation. If you say that these people are the cause of my happiness and distress, then where is the place of the soul in such a conception? This happiness and distress pertain not to the soul, but to the interactions of material bodies. If someone bites his tongue with his own teeth, at whom can he become angry in his suffering? So you can all practice. Bite your tongue with your teeth. And then who are you going to blame? Look around. You fool, you bit your own tongue. So the Avanti Brahmana is pointing out, just as it's ridiculous to blame someone else because you bit your tongue, similarly, you have to understand that it's ridiculous to blame anything other than the mind, your own mind, and your attachment to its movements. Why, he's pointing out, should you say that other people are the cause of your happiness and distress? And remember what he's gone through. Extreme abuse, harassment. Sometimes he would, in his begging as a wandering mendicant, he would get some food. So that means some people were treating him nicely, but then the harassers would come and pass urine on his food before he could eat it. Tie him up with ropes, pass air on him, take away his few things he had, some cloth to wrap around his body, his water pot, his sannyasi stick. They would just take it and then offer it, pretend to offer it back to him, and then yank it away again, and just total psychological and physical harassment. So his point is, the happiness I got when someone would give me something in charity, and the distress I got when someone abused me, it's actually got nothing to do with the soul. What these people are doing is simply responding. They're creating an affair between one material body and another. It's got nothing to do with the soul. So why should I blame other people? Their material body is interacting with my material body, but all that has got nothing to do with me, the spirit soul. Now, you might say, this sounds really difficult, doesn't it? But by hearing this information, you gradually become free. This is why hearing is so important in bhakti. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam accomplishes the loosening of the hard knot in the heart. Otherwise, it is impossible. As Shukadeva Goswami says in the beginning of the second canto, Pashyanapi Napashyati. You've already sufficiently experienced material existence, but you still don't see what's going on because of that mad attachment. The mind, combined with the false ego, pretends that you are a product of material existence, and the soul is lost. This means that toleration plays an enormous role in our life. Toleration means austerity. So we were pointing out the other night that even in material life, you have to tolerate so much. But what's the point? What's the goal of all that toleration in material existence? We discussed how those of you who are working or have your own business, you have to tolerate. You can ask Freddie, does everything always go your way in your business? You got to tolerate, right? That's part of austerity. Similarly, in spiritual life, there's toleration, which is part of austerity, but the payoff is inconceivably non-material. Eternity, full knowledge, complete bliss, Satchidananda. So you have to think, what's your payoff for all the austerities you go through in material life? What's your payoff? Just a momentary buzz. And we make a big deal out of that, don't we? And if someone interferes with our program, we get angry, we blame that person. So again, just think, how can you blame other persons when it's just their material body and mind interacting with your material body and mind? And you call that love or hate? So the Avanti Brahmana is saying that, how can you declare that other people are the cause of your happiness and distress? The soul has got nothing to do with all that stuff. In Bhagavad Gita, of course, Krishna explains the science of the soul to Arjuna. But you can just visualize Arjuna posing the question that, all right, I hear you talking, Krishna, how we're not the body. But when I look at on the other side of the battlefield, what do I see? Extended family members, former friends, former teachers. Naturally, I'm going to feel attachment. Naturally, I'm going to feel body connection. So what does Krishna tell him? Tams tatikshasva bharata. You just tolerate. Matra sparshas tukonteya shitoshna sukha dukata. This happiness and distress comes and goes like winter and summer seasons. You have to tolerate it. Theoretically, you know you're not the body, but when you look at who's on the battlefield, you feel affected. You tolerate. So tolerance is a big part of austerity, and austerity is part of bhakti. Austerity is part of material life. But what's the point of that austerity in material life? It is valueless. We've talked before about the 5 regrets of a terminal patient. Anyone remember what they are? That's one. At hospices, surveys have been done of what are the main regrets of someone who's about to give up their body. Number 1 is, why did I work so hard? In other words, what was the point? I worked and worked and worked, and now I lose it all. Another one is, why didn't I allow myself to be more happy? Why didn't you allow yourself to be more happy? Because you don't know what happiness is. That is the tragedy. You chased a mirage. So when they say, why didn't I allow myself to be more happy? They mean, why didn't I find out some natural happiness other than the illusion I was chasing? But what is that natural happiness? It's not known. Another one, why didn't I spend more time with friends? Why did I allow myself to become separated from friends who moved to other cities or moved to other countries? I didn't keep up with relationships. I became so busy, achieving, career, this achievement, that achievement. What was another one? Why didn't I express my emotions more? When I hated someone, I should have just said, I hate you. And when I loved someone, I should have said, I love you. Why didn't I do that more? Vent my emotions, give an outlet for my emotions. And then, why didn't I live my own life? Why did I simply make my whole life in terms of others' expectations? So this is the end result of undergoing so many inconveniences, tolerating so much for your material goals. At the end, you say, oh, what was the point of all this? And it's too late. On you go to your next body. Your mind carries you to your next body. So you performed austerities. It's like Ram Dass, when he was a brand new devotee. He was telling me in his town of Mata, the young guys had nothing to do. So they invented a pastime called dumpster diving. They would go where there are food markets, New World or whatever, and count down. And, you know, the big dumpsters in the back of the supermarkets. So they would just take the top off and, you know, climb up the side and just dive in. What were you looking for? Colored hairspray. You guys wanted to spray your hair? So you actually just dive into the dumpster and search through it all. Austerity. So I use that as an example of what it's like for us to claw our way through material existence, trying to get some satisfaction. We're dumpster diving. Looking for some scraps that will pacify us, satisfy us. And because everyone's doing that, you had a group of guys, right? It seemed like fun, right? Oh, look what I found. Did you ever fight over finding something? I want the hairspray. Oh, you were very equitable dumpster divers, huh? The police would never try to stop you? Oh, they had, oh. She had a big strategy, all just to dive into a dumpster. You had one guy guarding, and you had a getaway plan, right? So it's a suitable analogy for our activities of material existence. So again, the Avanti Brahmana is saying, how can you blame other people for your distress, or how can you give them credit for your happiness? When you bite your own tongue with your teeth, how can you blame anyone but yourself? Okay, what's next? You can't blame other people. What about, oh, you have some higher Vedic knowledge. What about the demigods, the devas? They're controlling everything. They're causing everything. But again, the same point. Whether it's other people or higher entities, how does all that apply to the spirit soul? Okay, the Bhagavatam explains how each sense is presided over by a demigod, a deva. So you could say, well, it's the devas. Because of them, my body is experiencing trouble. But again, he's pointing out, whether it's the devas or ordinary human beings, you're just dealing with the material bodies interacting with another material body. And we should always bear in mind, by our endeavors to cultivate bodily happiness, we are also accepting bodily pain. You have to have both sides of the coin. But we imagine there's only one side of the coin. As soon as you sign up for cultivating bodily happiness, you must also receive bodily pain. The bodily happiness and pain are administered by the demigods according to your karma. But you can't blame them. You signed up for all this, and you're identifying with this whole complex web. So whether you say it's other people or it's the demigods who control your senses, where is the place for the soul, the real you? Now, what about your own body? Well, if you can't blame others, you can't blame the demigods, you certainly can't blame your body, which is just a lifeless block of wood. So then you have to say, okay, maybe it's the soul. My soul is the source of happiness and distress. But happiness and distress, material influences, have nothing to do with the soul. You can't ascribe material happiness and distress to a stone or a brick. Similarly, you can't assign it to the soul. And we'll find out, you can't assign it to the body either. The body is just a piece of matter. Well, if you can't assign happiness and distress to the body, and you can't assign it to the soul, where do you assign it to? So that is the big question. So number 4 on the list of blame targets. If you know anything about astrology, it's the planets. Blame them. But the Avanti Brahmana is saying, how can the planets be the immediate cause of your suffering and happiness when the planets just influence bodies that have taken birth? At the time of birth, the chart is made of the planetary influences. Those planetary influences are about relationships between planets and the effect of those relationships on your body when it's born. But you are distinct from the planets and from the material body that's affected by the planets when it's born. So again, who should you be angry at? So I hope you're feeling some sense of material dislocation. Like, oh, what am I going to do? I can't blame this. I can't blame that. I guess I am spirit soul, aloof from all this. But how am I going to remember that? When the circumstances of this world push upon me, how am I going to remember the lessons from the Avanti Brahmana? This is why repeated hearing is necessary. Because we are so prone to forgetfulness. Why? Because we are living in an atmosphere, an ocean of forgetfulness. Therefore, our program is Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Eternally, we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. If you get so busy in your life with your career objectives, your business, your this or that, and you don't spend time for a daily practice of hearing about Krishna and chanting about Krishna, you're going to forget. No matter how great you are, no matter how pious your background is. You will forget. Because you're swimming in an ocean of forgetfulness. And you'll realize that when you claw your way back, hopefully. Then you start to realize what you lost. But we become so covered over by forgetfulness that we lose track of what we had. Well, I just feel normal. Okay, I'm not chanting my rounds. I'm not I'm not reading Bhagavatam, but yeah, I feel all right. I've got my job, I've got my family, I've got things are going on. What's the problem? I'm executing my material responsibilities perfectly. You see, the illusory energy has two potencies, the throwing potency and the covering potency. This is explained in third canto of Bhagavatam. It can throw you into the ocean of forgetfulness immediately or gradually. One day you're performing bhakti, and then the illusory energy says, what are you doing? Get real. Get out of there. Get a life. Achieve things. Do things. Get things. Come on. So that's the throwing potency. It can happen immediately, or it can happen through steady corrosion of our spiritual habits. But that's just one part of Maya's activity, the throwing potency. The other part is the covering potency. Once you're dragged into forgetfulness, then you're just buried. And as you often explain, a prime trick of the illusory energy is that once you're covered, first you're thrown into the ocean of forgetfulness, and then just deeper, deeper, deeper. And then the illusory energy tells us, you're so covered over, there's no point in trying to uncover yourself. Yeah, that's right. I'm defeated, so I might as well just live like that. We become convinced there's no way I can claw my way back to my bhakti practice because I'm covered over. And the illusory energy tells us, yes, right, you're covered over. You're a goner. Just accept it. And you might as well enjoy a few things while you're being covered over. Might as well achieve some things in the real world. Like normal people do. Well, look at the world today and see what normal people do. They destroy the environment. They destroy themselves. That is normal. So we should always have an attitude of suspicion towards material existence. The Bhagavatam 5th canto points this out, that when a hunter captures some animals, he shouldn't feel secure that they'll always stay in my trap. He's got to keep his eye on them constantly. And that's the way the 5th canto says you have to deal with your mind. And remember, the Avanti Brahmana has fingered the mind as the real problem. Terrible taskmaster, like a force it's a force like as powerful as God. We all know what the mind can do. But the only way to tame the mad mind is through devotional service. Otherwise, impossible. That was Arjuna's presentation to Krishna. Chanchala himana Krishna. Oh, the mind is so chanchala, so restless. It'll be impossible for me to control it. And Krishna agreed. It's difficult, but it can be done if you strive in the right way. Now just think, do you want to spend your whole life under the gun of your mind? Some of you already have insight into how the mind can just take you through loop-de-loops. But it seems like we're trapped. We're imprisoned by it, powerless. This is why we take shelter of the Hare Krishna mantra. It breaks the spell of the witch Maya. The result of this austerity and tolerance in bhakti is that you can aspire, you can look forward to love of Krishna. And that is the only thing that will satisfy us. The great treasures in life, the devotee, Krishna, and love of Krishna. Just one drop of love of Krishna can drown the whole world. So you all are experiencing a tiny part of one drop of the ocean of love of Krishna. That's what bhakti is all about. But we don't see it because we're conditioned. Our vision is polluted, so we don't see it. We don't see it in the chanting. We don't see it in the service we do. But if we hear about Krishna, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita regularly, our vision develops and we start to see. When you're asleep, none of the senses except hearing can help you. If while you're asleep, someone quietly comes into your room to cut off your head, what good will your eyes do? You can't see the person, they're quiet. But if the person makes a noise, you hear and you wake up. So in spiritual life, hearing is so important. Just as vibrating with the tongue is so important. After the class and the kirtan, I like when it's time for prasad, I watch the devotees. They just love sitting down and they're talking and eating and talking and eating. They're just such focus. You notice that? They're so, so their vision is so concentrated. There's no doubts going on. Because their tongue is engaged in Krishna's service. Hopefully they're talking about things that lead to increase in devotional service. So I like to watch. You're the proof that devotional service begins with the tongue. Seva mukhi jivadao swayameva spratya. So what seems impossible can be achieved. The process does work. It's your real career. So regardless of what other circumstances you take on in your life, families, jobs, spouse, children, this, that, the other, your main career is developing love of Krishna. If you forget that, what have you gained?